everyone, this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make this little springtime flower bracelet. It's really a very simple stitch. It doesn't take long to make and it turns out really cute. Now of course if you chose some brighter colors than I did, you could make it really springy. I just didn't have a whole lot of colors to choose from in the spring palette. So I made this turquoisey color and this little bit darker. It's kind of a teal and a dark teal. But it turned out really pretty. Of course, you don't have to use pink seed beads like I did on the outside. You could use silver, or you could use bronze, or you could use gold, and it would be just as pretty. I just put in the pink to make it a little bit brighter. And that's what that looks like on the wrist. I'll show you the clasping. It's really pretty. Nice, happy, whimsical little thing. And I'm going to take it off and show it to you off the wrist. And this is what it looks like off the wrist. It's really cute. If you used really bright colors and contrast, that would be really adorable too. This is what it looks like. And let's go ahead and look at the material list and make this. Okay, for this project today, we are going to be using 3x4 Rondel crystals. I'm using 2 colors. You can use as many or as few colors as you would like. You can do it all in one color, or you can do each flower a different color. There are 6 rondels to each flower, so that will give you a reference if you decide you want to do it that way. I'm using an opaque simply because it shows up better in this pattern than a translucent. However, translucent, if you want to use that, that's fine too. I'm also using a 4mm round, and this is a dyed glass pearl I got from Shirley at Budget Bead Box. Has a really nice finish. It's kind of a peachy color. But you can use any 4mm round bead that you would like. You can use a crystal, you can use a druke, or a glass pearl. That's fine. We're also going to be using seed beads. We're going to be using 11/0 and 15/0 and 2 8/0 seed beads. My 11/0s and 15/0s are Toho, and they're galvanized pink lilac. The 8/0s that I have chosen, because I didn't have any in this color, I have chosen nickel plate Toho 8/0s. That's because they will match my nickel tone finding very well. I'm going to use a lobster claw clasp, and I'm going to use a jump ring. This is a heavier gauge jump ring, and it is an open jump ring. So if it is an open jump ring, you want to make sure you have a heavier gauge so you can close it very tightly so that your threads don't fall through. My closed jump rings are too thick to run through this particular lobster claw. So if you have a closed jump ring and a lobster claw that will fit well together, use that instead. That will work great. I'm also going to be using Fireline today instead of Nanofil. I'm going to use it because it's in the smoke color and it seems to look better with these beads than the crystal does. I'm using 8-pound. You can also use 6-pound. If you're using translucent or very light beads, make sure you use the crystal color, or you use Nanofil in 8 or 10-pound. When you thread your needle, you will want to start with at least a wingspan. You will need to add or extend your Fireline during this project, so I will post a video in the description box below that will show you how to do that if you don't know how to do it. So there will be a link there for you. Now, a wingspan is when you spread your arms out from side to side like you're going to fly away. Measure from your fingertips the length of your first arm across your chest, the length of your second arm to your fingertips. And that is a wingspan. Let's go ahead and get started with this project now. Okay, to start this project, pick up 6 beads of the same color and 6 of your Rondel crystals and bring them down to the end of your thread. You don't have to leave a long tail, but leave enough to tie a knot with, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to take our tail side and our working side, we're going to crisscross them and bring them into a circle, just like this. And then we're going to tie a couple overhand knots just to make sure they're secure. Make sure as you do this that your thread or your knot goes between your beads and not on top of them, just like this. And I'm going to tie one more. And then I'm just going to pull that tight. And you should just have a circle of beads, just like this. Now, we're going to sew through all of these beads simply because of the fact this is our first unit and we want this to be very strong. So I'm just going to move my tail and I'm just going to start sewing between or through all of the beads. Try not to pull your knot into the beads. So just sew gently and go into the next bead. And we'll just sew all the way around. I have an awful lot of thread on my needle. Usually for my tutorials I make it shorter, but you're just going to have to watch me pull thread through. I'm sorry. If you can go through 2 at a time, that's great too. Sometimes these are at angles that you can't really do that. Alright, so now we're all the way back. We're just going to sew past this bead with past this joint, this knot here, and go a couple beads past that just so it's not in our way. So just go over that knot and here is fine. We'll just go into our embellishment from this point, just like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead. And then I'm going to pick up a pearl, and then I'm going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead. I'm going to go into the bead directly across from the one I'm coming out of. So I'm coming out of this bead, I'm going to go into this bead, I'm going to go into this bead on the same side that I'm coming out of this bead. So straight across. And I'm going to go into this bead right here. And I'm going to hold on to my beadwork and pull my needle through. And then I'm going to push this over the top and arrange it until my seed beads and my pearl lay really nice on top here. Just a little bit closer so you can see. And then I'm going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead and I'm going to go through the flower. Now if you don't like to use 15-0s, I know I have a lot of people that don't like 15-0s or don't have them, you can do this with an 11-0. It's just more prominent looking, but you can do it. And then I'm going to turn this a little bit. I'm coming out of this side of the pearl right here now. I'm going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead and I'm going to go into the opposite side of the bead I started in and go through that bead right here and pull. Now I'm going to cut this tail down just a little bit because it's in my way. I'm not going to cut it completely down because I don't want it to slide out of the knot. Sometimes they can do that. So I'm just going to cut it down like this so it's not in my way. Now we are going to begin putting an embellishment of 11-0s all the way around the flower we just created. So pick up an 11-0 seed bead. You're coming out of this crystal, you're going to go directly into the next crystal and you're going to pop an 11-0 between those crystals. So just pull your thread until you feel that pop nice and tight in there. And then into the next one. And all the way around. Pick up another 11-0, go into the next crystal. My fingers are turning black from the Fireline already, but that's okay. Pick up another 11-0, go into the next crystal. And you can even hear it pop down in there. And continue. And this is the one where our knot was, so it may be a little tighter to get through. And just push through right past that 11-0. Don't go into it. just go over it and pull this down, just like this. Now I can cut this little thread down more, like that. Make sure everything is arranged nicely. Sometimes your little 11-O's twist and they're not in there properly, and you want to make sure they are before you move on to your next stitch. So I just arrange them a little bit like that. And they're not going to be absolutely perfect, but you want them to look nice, just like this. Now we're coming out of this bead here. We want to put on our clasping, or we're coming out of the crystal. Let's go ahead and go up into this 11-O. And we're going to put on our clasping so that we don't have to come back and do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up an 11-O and an 8-O. And we're going to drop the 11-O and one of the 8-O's that we put in our material list, just like this. Now I'm going to go through my clasp like this. And then I will go through the 8-O seed bead here. I'm just going to hold on to everything, hold on to that 8-O, and pull my thread through, just like that. I'm going to pick up another 11-O seed bead, and I'm going to go into the 11-O we started in, right here. And I'm going to pull my thread down. Pull the 11-O down next to the one that we put on previous, just like this. Now we need to sew back through this a couple of times to make sure that it's secure. So I'm coming out of this 11-O, I'm going to go up into the 11-O on the side where my thread is coming out, and up through the 8-O and up through the clasping, just like this. And then I'm just going to pull this through. And then I'm going to go around the clasping into the 8-O and then into the bead on the opposite side from the one we just went through. Pull your thread through and go through the 11-O seed bead. Do that at least one more time to make sure it's very secure, and we'll be back. Okay, so I have gone ahead and secured my clasping one more time. I'm coming out of the 11-O seed bead that's between the crystals here. We have to sew all the way down to this 11-O to start our next unit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the crystal here, and to straighten out our 11-O's a little bit, we're going to sew through them also. So we're going to travel up through this 11-O and then through the next crystal. Just like this. Did I get through that 11-O? Maybe I didn't. There we go. All right. And then through the next 11-O and the next crystal, and then up through the 11-O on the bottom if you can get to it. If you cannot, just come up at an angle through the crystals. They are a little tight, but they shouldn't be too hard to navigate through. Now we're going to go through this one right here. And this is where we're at, right here. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pick up 6 of my other color crystal, which is really close to the same color, but I'm going to go ahead and pick up 6 of those. Now you're just going to go into the opposite side of the 11-O you're coming out of. So just go in here and pull these down. Like that. Now you're going to sew all the way back around them again to secure them. So let's go ahead and go through all of the crystals. And this seems redundant because we are going to sew back through with our embellishments anyway. However, it is important because we need to cinch these two on top together. So just go ahead and do it. Don't worry about having to sew through it too much. Just do it. Now, when we get to this top crystal here, right before the 11-0 seed bead, we are going to go through it and skip the 11-0 and go directly into this crystal here. We're going to sew through two of the crystals, and the second crystal is where we are going to put on our embellishment. So you'll always do your embellishment the crystal after you go through the 11-0. So 11-0 and the second bead right there. Okay? So what you'll notice too is these crystals seem a little smaller than these. For some reason, Chinese crystals, even though you get the same size, they're never the same size. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our pearl on now. So you're going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead and a pearl and a 15-0. And we're going to go directly across into the bead, right across from the one that we're coming out of, and into the same side that we're coming out of this bead in. So straight across, we're going to go into that bead, and we're going to pull this down. And just kind of guide it over the top as you pull it down. And then just kind of manipulate it into the center and make sure that it pops in there really nice like this. And then we're going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead. And we're going to go into the pearl. Put your thumb over the pearl, pull so that nothing gets out of whack. You want to hold on to it. And then pick up another 15-0 seed bead. We're going to go into the crystal on the opposite side from which we started. So we started here. We're going to go into this side here. And again, hold on to your pearl and pull your thread through. Now, you're going to find that you're going to tangle on everything a million times, especially if you have a long thread. So just untangle, and now we're ready to put our 11-0 embellishment on. I'm going to back off just a little so I stay in frame better. Now I'm going to pick up an 11-0. I'm coming out of this crystal right here. I'm going to go into the next crystal and pop an 11-0 between the crystals, just like this. And again, and again, now of course here you don't have to worry about putting a 11-0 in because it's already there. So just go through that 11-0 and then go through the crystals. So I'm going to go through the 11-0 here. This makes sure that I have a double pass of thread through that 11-0 since it is my connection bead and we skipped it when we went around the first time. So now we're going through that 11-0. We are then going to go through the next crystal right here. And grab an 11-0 and place the last one in between the crystals here. I'm trying to hold on to this so you can see, but I don't think I'm being very successful here. There we go. Now I'm going to go into the next crystal. And as you sew back down to the bead on the bottom where we need to make our next unit, you can go ahead and go through the 11-0s because it's going to be tight if you don't. So now we're just going to sew into the next 11-0 seed bead here, the next crystal, and the 11-0 on the bottom, just like this, or you can do them one at a time. Just depends on how well you can get your needle through there. And pull. And that's basically what there is to it. Let's go ahead and do one more together. So I'm going to pick up 6 of my crystals of my other color. And because this crystal is a little bit bigger than this crystal, I'm going to have a little bit different size in the flowers, which looks okay too. So if you find that your crystals are a little bit different sizes, it's okay. Don't worry about it too much. So I have picked up 6 of my crystals. I'm coming out of the 11-0 on this side. I'm going to go into the 11-0 on this side. Pull them down and sew back through them. Remembering as you sew around to skip the 11-0 seed bead. Okay. I guess things are just going to argue with me. So I'll just argue back. Okay, so here I am coming through this last crystal. I'm not going to go through that 11-0. I'm just going to go through this crystal here and the one behind it. And now I know I'm in position to put my pearl in the middle. So always the second bead once outside of the 11-0 seed bead. Now you're going to pick up a 15-0, a 4mm round bead, a 15-0. You're going to go directly across and into the crystal. Right here. I'm going to pull this down, bring it over the top, put my thumb over it, and tug it a little bit here. Just like that. If it starts to distort a little bit like mine just did, just keep manipulating it. It's fine. It'll eventually go down in there correctly. Then pick up a 15-0 seed bead and go into this side. I'm going to put my thumb over it and I'm going to give it a little tug so everything is in order nicely. And like I said, you can arrange it several times. So then I'm going to go into the opposite side of the bead I started in, right here. Pull this one down, and now that I have them all 4 in, I can make sure they're really nice and neat like this. Then I'm coming out of this crystal right here. I'm going to pick up an 11-0 and travel into the next crystal. I give a little tug to make sure that it's in there securely and not twisted. Pull your thread through and continue all the way around. When you get to the 11-0 that you're attached to, then you are going to go through that 11-0. So here I am coming through this crystal here. I can also go up through this 11-0. Maybe. Maybe not. So I'll just go through this crystal. Like I said, they're laying at funny angles, so sometimes you can get through, sometimes you can't. Now I'm going through the 11-0, right here. And you're going to find that your thread wants to tangle. Just pull it slowly so that you can detour it from tangling. Now go into this crystal here. And then pick up an 11-0. So through the next crystal and the next 11-0 right here. Pop that down, sew into the next crystal and the next 11-0 if you can. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Right there. And you're ready to start your next flower. We're going to continue doing this until you have a length half an inch short of the length that you wish to finish with. So as you can see, I want mine to be just a little bit over about 7.5 inches. I can measure my clasping on this end because it's already here, so I know how much room basically it's going to take on this side for the other half of my clasping. Since we're all going to have different sizes of clasps, different types of clasps, this is the easiest way. Also, to say that all the beads can be different sizes, as you can see in mine. These are both labeled as 3x4 or 4x3 crystal rondelles. However, you can see that this crystal makes a smaller unit than this crystal does. So I don't want to give you exact units, though I will tell you I made 15 to get around 7 inches here. Now I know that if I want a 7.5, I can go ahead and put my clasping on, and that is how I'm going to measure the size bracelet that I'm going to make. So after you have achieved the length that you want, then we are going to put on the clasp on this side. So I've made my last flower. I'm coming out of the 11-0 seed bead here as I would to make another flower. And I'm going to do exactly what I did before. I am going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead and an 8-0 seed bead. Now, because I am using an open jump ring, I'm using a heavy gauge jump ring, and I am going to need to close it tightly. Make sure that if you're going to use an open jump ring, you can use a closed one. My closed ones are too thick to engage with this lobster claw clasp. It won't go over them. So I'm using this one, which is probably about, oh, I don't know, an 18 gauge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure where my opening is here is closed very, very tightly. You can also put a wire guardian on and then just hook your jump ring onto that too if you would like. However, that's going to give me a little bit more length than I want. So I am just going to really, I'm going to make sure that my jump ring is tightly closed by just kind of shaking it on either side and just closing it really tightly. I don't often use these and they're not working well. Let me grab a different one. Okay, so now I can actually do this. So I'm going to hold one side and then the other side. And because this is such a heavy gauge, it's just arguing with me a little. But they're really strong. It's a really strong jump ring. But now you can see that I've closed it really tightly. I don't know if I was in camera or not. All I did was place on either side and shimmy it a little bit until it's closed nice and tightly. Now I can go through this jump ring right here, and I'll just make sure that the opening side is away from where I'm sewing through, just in case the thread can go through it. I'll just look for it and kind of turn it away from where I'm working. And then I will go through this 8-0 seed bead. Pull that down and move my opening away again. And then I will pick up an 11-0 and go through this side. Just like that. So the opposite side of the side you started in, you will put an 11-0 on your needle and go through the bead, just like that. Now just sew back through that several times and then we'll come back and we will tie it off. So you're coming out of this bead, go up through this one and then through this one, through your clasp, through this one and back into this one, and do that several times, at least 3 or 3 passes. So do it 2 more times and we'll be back. Okay, so now you can see that I've gone ahead and I have secured my clasping and it looks really good, and it's it's got a nice strength to it after going through it a couple more times. I'm going to turn this now back off just a little bit, and we are going to tie off our thread. So if you want to just turn your bracelet over, and now you can sew through the next bead. So I'm coming out of this 11-0 seed bead here. I'm going to sew through this crystal here, and just be aware that it is a little tight at this point because we've cinched everything in really tight purposely. So just try to work your way through that little bead. Oops, I had it. And then you're just going to have to go at an angle and get it through, just like this. Might be a little tight. It can be done. Don't stress too much over it. And then go through this 11-0 seed bead right here. Now we're going to tie right here between this crystal and this 11-0 seed bead. So as you can see, I am just going right underneath this 11-0, and I'm going to pull my thread up, and I am going to go through the loop and tie a knot and draw it down between those two beads. And then I can go into my next crystal right here. And the next 11-0 and the next crystal. I'm just going to go all the way over here, and I will tie another knot here. So I'll just go between the beads. You can just kind of push up in between the beads just like that, and you're going to have to guide your thread where you want it to go because there's a lot of space there in between your pearl embellishment. So just guide it. You can see how I'm just kind of messing with it and guiding it until it's between those beads correctly. And I'm sorry, I keep getting out of camera on this one, and I apologize. I know I could mark my bead mat or something so that I stayed in camera. However, I change the angle of my camera quite often, and I don't like the distraction on the bead mat. It bugs me. So, there we go. Now, I have just guided that knot down in between there. It just takes a minute. Just kind of guide it, navigate it, make it go where you want it to go. You are the boss here. And then we'll go into this 11-0, and I'll see if I can navigate down into this crystal and this 11-0 here. And I will just cut my thread off. You can sew through and knot as much as you like. Doesn't matter. And there we have it. You can leave a little bit and burn it down if you'd like to, but this works just fine too. Just like this. And that's what that looks like. I'll get you close to the units so you can see them now that they're finished. Now, what looks prettier is to have a 15-0 in between the crystals because then it's not quite so prominent with the 11-0s. However, sewing through the 11-0 here and here is necessary. If you have a 15-0 to sew through, you're going to find that it's not going to work well. But if you wanted to use a 15-0 on the outside here, you'd still, as you're making it, just make sure the upper and lower joint between the two crystals here has an 11-0. So place an 11-0, 15-0, 15-0, 11-0, 15-0, 15-0, like that. And that way you could still connect and you would have less of a prominent look of the seed beads. And as you can see on the back, it really makes a flower look. I may continue working on making another one that has even more of a flower look. I actually wish I had some prettier colors in these opaque rondelles. I just don't have a bunch of pretty ones in the opaques, but the opaques work really good. So anyway, that's how you make this bracelet. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I will put this on and let you see it. I have to do it off camera because it's a lobster claw. So, and here it is. I'll show you my clasping. And that's what it looks like on the wrist. I think this would be really pretty in like pink and purple, or just really bright springy colors would be really pretty. Even if you had some frosted white ones and then some pink ones, and I don't know. But I looked and looked to try to find something a little bit brighter and cheerier, and I just didn't have any in the opaques. So anyway, that's what that looks like, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.